This will now be our third straight week of making picks for the 2024 college football season, and since we are now into October, this will be about week 6. I'm going to quickly put up the graphic for how I did last week, as I ended up getting 21 out of the 31 games right, and had a 68% pick percentage. Looking back, I really wish I would have picked Louisiana over Wake Forest, as my gut was telling me that would happen, and I also should have gone with Colorado and Arizona, but you win some and you lose some. Today we're to make those picks, but before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to take a quick moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and make some picks. Okay, so our first game is going to be Houston versus TCU. Houston is currently 1-4, and it's going to be a complete rebuild for head coach Willie Fritz. They look terrible, and they'll travel on the road to TCU, who's fresh off of a big win. I think TCU is slowly starting to find their stride, and I think they're a bowl team, so I think they cruise in this game and end up winning that. There's two other Friday night games which are worth noting, as Michigan State, who is 3-2, travels on the road to number 6 Oregon, who is 4-0. Oregon is also finding their stride right now, and Michigan State is slowly getting worse, and currently Oregon is favored by 24, so I think they cruise and win by just about that much. The big game of Friday night is going to be 3-1 Syracuse versus number 25 UNLV, who's currently 4-0. Syracuse has been a surprise under head coach Fran Brown, and this year UNLV has been the ultimate surprise. They're ranked number 25 in the country for the first time in school history, and despite losing their starting quarterback Matthew Sluka, Hajj Malik Williams has been great, and UNLV has been cruising. I think UNLV will continue the momentum and get their third Power 5 win, and this will be a huge season for them. Getting over to Saturday, we have some good games. UCLA will take on Penn State on the road, and honestly that game will not be that difficult for them. UCLA has gotten beaten by 3 straight Power 5 opponents, and that's not going to change, and Penn State's going to continue to roll. Another big game is number 9 Missouri versus number 25 Texas A&M. The Tigers are currently 4-0, and the Aggies are 4-1. The Aggies haven't lost a game since they played Notre Dame in week 1, and Marcel Reed is starting to figure it out. Mizzou, on the other hand, is a top 10 team and undefeated, but they've struggled with both Boston College and Vanderbilt over the last 3 weeks. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but for now, I'm going to say that Mizzou ultimately survives in this game by a couple of points, and Texas A&M will have a chance to win, but they're not going to end up executing. SMU versus Louisville is a huge game. The Mustangs are currently 4-1, and they haven't lost since they played BYU in week 2. Louisville, on the other hand, is currently 3-1, and they are fresh off of a 1-touchdown loss to Notre Dame. Both these teams are pretty even in my eyes, and while Louisville is currently favored by 7, I'm actually going to pick SMU to go on the road and win this one. That's going to be one of my gutsy picks of this week, and it'll be huge for Rhett Lashley in that program. Navy and Air Force end up playing this week, as Air Force is usually typically pretty good out in the Mountain West, and Navy's enjoyed a 4-0 season so far. This is a pretty interesting game, as it is between two military academies, and Navy's going to win this game and get to 5-0. Boston College versus Virginia is another intriguing game to watch, as Boston College is coming off of a scare, and Virginia is also 3-1. Tony Elliott is looking for a signature win, and honestly, I think he's going to get it. I think he's going to get Virginia to 4-1 for the first time in a long time, as Boston College has looked shaky these last couple of weeks. Another noon game is Purdue versus Wisconsin. The Boilermakers are currently 1-3, and the Badgers are 2-2. I ended up going to Purdue for a couple of years, and I know well enough that Wisconsin always beats Purdue. That's not going to change this year, as Wisconsin's going to cruise to 3-2, and Purdue will fall to 1-4, and there's going to be serious question marks around Ryan Walters and the future of his head coaching tenure there. Another game is Pittsburgh versus North Carolina. Pitt is currently 4-0, and North Carolina is 3-2. North Carolina is fresh off of losses to both James Madison and Duke, whereas Pitt was on bye and they just beat Youngstown. They had 2 big wins in the month of September, and I think Pitt is the ACC darling this year, and I think they're going to go on the road and beat UNC in that one, and that will be a huge victory for Pat Narduzzi. Wake Forest versus NC State is a battle of two teams that I think will be near the bottom of the ACC, as Wake Forest just lost at home to Louisiana, and North Carolina State has been struggling the last couple of weeks. Honestly, this game isn't really worth noting to me that much, but I do have to make a pick because it is a Power 5 game, as NC State I think cruises in my opinion. Heading over to the 2:30 slate, the first game we have to talk about is Iowa versus Ohio State. The Hawkeyes are 3-1, with their only loss being to Iowa State, and the number 3 Buckeyes are 4-0, and they haven't really beat anybody, but they did go beat MSU last week on the road. I've been giving OSU a hard time because of their schedule, and I think it is true, but this is an opportunity for a quality win finally. Iowa's defense is tough, but Ohio State's offense is better, and Ohio State cruises to a big win. Auburn plays Georgia this week, and this is an intriguing matchup. Auburn's currently 2-3, as they've had a really weird season as they've lost to Oklahoma, Cal, and Arkansas. Georgia, on the other hand, is fresh off of a loss to Alabama, and even though they came back, a lot of Dogs fans are concerned right now. Carson Beck hasn't really looked all that sharp, but I think Georgia rightens the ship here in a good old-fashioned rivalry game, and they kick Auburn off the field. Ole Miss will be looking for a bounce back against South Carolina, as the Rebels dropped a game they shouldn't have to Kentucky at home. They're still 4-1, and they still have a great team. South Carolina has been a bit of a surprise this year, as they are currently 3-1, and we'll see if Lenora Sellers is back, but I think Ole Miss ends up winning this game and has a bounce-back performance. Number 23, Indiana. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that. The Hoosiers are ranked in the top 25 for the first time since week 1 of 2021, and they are currently 5-0. Northwestern is 2-2, and honestly, I think this game is going to be a lot closer than the experts think. I know a lot of my friends are saying that Indiana is going to win this game pretty easily, but Northwestern is tough to beat, and David Braun's a good coach. Northwestern is never a free win in my eyes, and we'll see how Indiana responds to getting a ton of hype. I still think they're going to end up winning, but it's going to be closer than 13.5 like they are favored. Another battle of teams that I think will be in the back end of the ACC are Virginia Tech and Stanford. Yes, Virginia Tech has sort of gotten screwed, as they've lost close games to Miami, Vanderbilt, and Rutgers, but they still have not been able to execute. Stanford, on the other hand, got that big win against Syracuse, but got beat by Clemson. And while these two teams' records aren't great, I think it should be a very fun matchup to watch. Ultimately, I do think Virginia Tech is finally going to win a close game, and they're going to go on the road and beat Stanford. Going over to the Big 12, we'll have West Virginia versus Oklahoma State. West Virginia was supposed to take the next step this year with Garrett Greene and Neil Brown, but that has not happened. They lost their two biggest games on the schedule to both Pitt and Penn State, and Oklahoma State has kind of followed a similar path. They lost to both Utah and K-State, and now both of these teams desperately need a win. Oklahoma State has really not looked good at all, but honestly, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because they are at home, and say they get to 4-2, and West Virginia goes under the 500 mark. Going over to the Big Ten, we have to talk about Rutgers versus Nebraska. Who would have thought the Scarlet Knights would be 4-0 in the month of October? Not me. Nebraska, on the other hand, also is 4-1, with their one loss being to Illinois. This game is actually extremely underrated, and I think Nebraska ends up pulling this one off. They are at home, and Nebraska will cruise to 5-1 for the first time in a long time, but Rutgers is still a decent team. Number 1 Alabama is fresh off of a huge victory over Georgia, and they are proving that they're still the elite team in the SEC. Vanderbilt, on the other hand, is 2-2, and while they almost beat Mizzou, they're not going to have that kind of luck this week against Bama, as I think the Crimson Tide cruise to a humiliating victory over the Commodores and win that game by a mile. Going over to the ACC, we have to talk about Clemson versus Florida State. In the preseason, this was one of my favorite games, but now it is nothing. Clemson is currently 3-1 and ranked number 15 in the country, and after getting boat raced by Georgia in week 1, they have completely figured it out. Florida State, on the other hand, has not been able to figure things out. They are 1-4 with their only win coming over Cal, and right now they don't even know who's playing between DJ Uiagalelei and their backup quarterback Brock Glenn. Clemson's only favored by 14.5, which is surprising to me, and I think they end up winning by more than that. James Madison is 4-0 and UL Monroe is 3-1. ULM's only loss came on the road to Texas, and James Madison is still perfect. It looks like JMU is picking up right where they left off, and they're quickly cementing themselves as a team that can compete for the college football playoff spot. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but I think James Madison continues to 5-0 against a solid UL Monroe team. Now, as we get into the night slate, there are some really fun games. The headlining game is number 4 Tennessee versus Arkansas. Yes, Arkansas is only 3-2, but they honestly could be 5-0 at this point, as they really should have beaten A&M, and they really should have beaten Oklahoma State. Still though, Arkansas is at home, and Tennessee's fresh off of a bye. Will Tennessee be kind of lazy and sleepwalking? I don't know. I think the Volunteers ultimately do escape, but it is a night game, and it is on the road, and it is a trap game in my eyes, and Arkansas is going to keep this game close. After that, we talk about Michigan versus Washington. The number 10 Wolverines haven't exactly impressed me that much this year, as after kind of struggling in their first few games, their only marquee win came against USC at home. Washington, on the other hand, hasn't really done that much either, and they just lost to Rutgers. Washington desperately needs a bounce-back game, but I don't think they have the talent to win this, and ultimately I think Michigan wins this game on the road because they are a tougher and better coached team. It could be close though. USC versus Minnesota is still one of those weird Big Ten matchups. The number 11 Trojans are 3-1 with their last loss coming against Michigan, and they're most recently off a win against Wisconsin. Minnesota has struggled. They have not been able to get things going the last couple of weeks, and that's going to continue. USC goes into Minneapolis and wins this game. Baylor against Iowa State is an intriguing matchup because I think Baylor is really hungry for a win. They've lost by less than one score the last 2 weeks, and Iowa State has kind of been going under the radar. They kind of struggled to put away Houston for a little while, but because the Cyclones are at home, I think they're going to cruise to 5-0, and Baylor will fall to 2-4. The sky isn't falling yet for Dave Aranda, but they really need to pick up a big win here soon, or people are going to start to panic. We now get to talk about a battle in Florida as 3-1 UCF plays 2-2 Florida. I thought the Knights were going to cruise to 4-0 with a victory over Colorado, but they would end up getting humiliated at home. This changes my whole perspective on UCF right now, and Florida on the other hand, I don't really know what to think. Yes, they're 2-2, but also I don't think they're as bad as their record states. Contrary to popular opinion, I think Florida's actually going to win this game. That's going to be one of my upset picks of this week, and the Gators get their third win of the season. Going back over to the ACC, we have to talk about 5-0 Duke and 3-2 Georgia Tech. Duke has been a surprise under first-year head coach Manny Diaz, and they now have a couple of Power 5 wins under their belt. Georgia Tech, on the other hand, lost to both Syracuse and Louisville in close games, and they're going to be fighting to get a win. I don't really know what to make of this Duke team just yet, but in my opinion, Georgia Tech's going to win this game and get to 4-2, and Duke will fall to 5-1. We still have a couple more games to pick, and the first one is Kansas versus Arizona State. Kansas was a preseason ranked team who was expected to compete for a Big 12 title, but that has completely fallen apart. The Jayhawks are 1-4, and right now there's question marks around everything there. Arizona State, on the other hand, is 3-1, but they haven't really beaten anybody, and they most recently lost to Texas Tech. Arizona State is at home, though, and Kansas has given me no reason to pick them, so I'm going to say the Sun Devils win and get to 4-1, and Coach Dillingham is building something solid. So College Game Day is going to Cal for their game against Miami, as the Canes are 5-0, and the Golden Bears are 3-1. The Golden Bears' lone loss comes to Florida State, and Miami barely survived against Virginia Tech and questionably won. Cam Ward right now is one of my top guys for the Heisman and the 2025 NFL Draft, and the Canes have looked really solid, and Cal has also been pretty good. Despite many people picking Cal to win this game, I'm going to say Miami goes in there and wins and puts some of the haters to rest. Okay, so our final game is Texas Tech versus Arizona. This game is a little bit more intriguing than I originally thought, as Tech is currently 4-1 and Arizona is 3-1. I ended up watching the Wildcats in person against K-State and they looked really bad, but they just bounced back with a victory on the road against Utah, so I can't write them off. Texas Tech is 4-1, but I still don't really know how good they are. I'm going to say Arizona wins this game, and Noah Fifita and Tetairoa McMillan get back on a roll. So yeah, those were my picks for week 6 of the college football season, and I'll probably miss every single one of them. But what do you guys think? What pick did I get right and wrong? What are your thoughts for week 6, and what topic should I cover in my next video? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.